Friends, as you can tell, we've been having a little difficulty trying to get everyone online, and I'm in touch with Drew, trying to find out where he is. I'm hoping that everyone else, Miami, I haven't talked with you, but Miami, if you are online, would you please unmute your mic and let me know that things are okay there?
Sure, we're here and we're ready to go.
Oh, great. Good. Thanks a lot, Dave. We will begin. And in this blessed season of anticipating the birth of Jesus, we join in our Institute Fellowship in a spirit of joy and new life. Our desire is that we will experience the rebirth of Christ in our hearts, in our fellowship, as we learn and pray together this evening. So let's begin this time together in prayer. Would you join me, please? Loving God, so recently we've observed Thanksgiving, and now we're anticipating the birth of our Savior, and we're filled with gratitude and with joy for your bountiful gifts and for the supreme miracle of all, the birth of Jesus Christ, who is indeed your incarnate Word and our Lord. We're thankful also for your gift of the Leadership Institute and ask that you will open the minds of each of us for the truths you would have us learn tonight. Will you give us guidance, and will you guide Matt Macy in his teaching? We've come because we want to be better prepared to fulfill the mission you have for us, for our churches. So we give thanks in the name of Christ, Lord of our lives, Lord of the church. Amen. I'm going to turn the controls back over to the Friends Center.
Your original invitation and start over. I don't know. Well, how do you start? How do you start at the beginning?
Do that.
Start a meeting. Just do that.
That's it.
All right.
Okay. Isn't that wild? Everybody crashed. No.
Yeah, my experience with this
Bud Lawrence is
online meeting stuff, it's just like no surprise to me.
Yeah.
I haven't had any good experience.
Right.
There he is.
Hey, Matt, can you hear me? I will miss you. Hey, Matt, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I can hear you and see you now. And I'm going to go down one by one. Fellow friends, can you hear me?
We hear you loud and clear.
Are you online, Feller?
Online.
Yes.
Merle, are you online?
We're fine.
Miami, are you online? Miami, are you online?
Yes, sir. We are online.
Thanks. Micah, Burnett, are you online? Micah?
Yeah.
Mike? All right. I'm unmuting everybody as we go. All right. We are recording, so I'm going to go back up and turn the controls back over to you and try again. Ministry Center. I'm taking the controls to you, Matt.
Okay, here I am.
Yep, there you are. Everything's fine. Go ahead. And your PowerPoint is up and going. So I'm going to mute my mic and get on with some text here.
Okay, well, it's great to be here, and I guess you know that I've been working with EFM for about a year now, and I just got back from a 2-week trip with my wife, celebrating our 20th anniversary. So for the last 5 or 6 weeks, I've been introducing myself. I've been introducing my family as my beautiful wife, who's 40 years old, which she appreciates me telling everybody she's 40. And also my son, my oldest son, Joel, who's 14. His shoe size has been matching his age so far. So 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 is at size 14 now. And he just, about 3 or 4 weeks ago, he passed me in height. And so I've got a 40-year-old wife and a son that's older than me. So that's kind of new in my life. And on this, taller than me. And on this trip to Florida, I started calling my wife my 40-20. And she never seemed to be bothered by that. I don't think she realized that a 40-20 is the tractor that I drove for several years on the farm, the John Deere 40-20. But my beloved wife is my 40-20 right now. Been married. She's 40 years old and we've been married 20 years, so that's how I got the 40-20. But the topic for tonight is advancing the church. I know that I'm a poor follow-up to last month when we were in Thailand with Albert Adhikari and Bob Adhikari, and Adam was a big part of emceeing that, and they all did just a really good job, and that was really exciting. And I was just telling the guys here that that was one of the first trips I've ever taken where it was just really hard for me to see the trip come to an end. It was just a surreal experience to be with all of our missionaries together and to watch the powerful conversations and the rich experiences of missionaries meeting and talking about the EFM mission statement, et cetera. And also, I've just, my heart's been tender lately, partly the holiday season, but also, the youth pastors just met for round table. And, I just still continue to love Mid-America and miss some of the experiences I had in the last 20 years with the other youth pastors. So this is kind of a new lifestyle for me, but I'm loving it. And I also want to just say a tribute to Merle Kinzer, celebrating, is it 60 years? I think that's right. 60 years in ministry. Not long ago, Jesse Penna made a pretty long trip to Montana to see Eugene Peterson, and he sent out reports and, talked a lot about that rich experience, and I really admire Jesse for doing that. Around that same time, Adam Monahan made a trip to go see Merle Kinzer, and Adam, just kind of in his off time, sent me a pretty lengthy email describing the conversation he had with Merle Kinzer. And after I read that, it was just really exciting to read that. I wrote back to Adam and I said, "You made the right choice for the trip." As much as I admire Jesse for making the trip to see Eugene Peterson, I believe that everyone should drive many miles to spend a day or spend a few hours with a man like Merle Kinzer that has the track record he has and has the rich wisdom to speak. Every time I've heard him talk about ecclesiology or missiology, anything, it's been rich and very rewarding to me. So I'm just really thankful for Merle Kinzer's faithfulness and how he's also continues to serve the church by teaching the rest of us when he has opportunities. So the idea of advancing the church really fits with a man like Merle Kinzer's life and his story. And, advancing the church, what does that mean? Well, in the most basic sense, I think it means making disciples. Because we know that when you make disciples, church just happens. So church is. And so advancing the church is making disciples. And so I'm going to be talking about missions. And when I talk about missions, that's kind of the role I carry and a passion that I carry. But I'm talking about missions in every meaning of what that means to make disciples. And we'll see that in some of the scripture we look at today. But it seems like this may be just kind of basic, but I just want to remind us that there's still a need for missions today. I think not that many years ago, I kind of thought missions, especially to the unreached, was something of the past, like maybe something our grandparents did. And recent experiences like in 2007, some of you have heard me tell these stories several times, but in 2007 in Nepal, we were at a medical clinic with Samson Ratnaraj in a village where they were just starting their work. And some of our students were telling Bible stories to the Hindu people that were outside with a translator. And during the question and answer time, which is pretty customary with the Hindu culture, Julie Healton, it was Julie Penna then, but Julie Healton, during that question and answer time, discovered that these people had never heard of Jesus. They had never, ever heard, not even heard of Jesus. It's not that they didn't understand the gospel message. They had actually never heard of Jesus. And that really was a profound moment for me. After all my experiences in Africa, which I love, that was even the year that I adopted our son, Caleb. And he was 16 months. And so we started hugging Africa and loving Africa and kissing Africa and spanking Africa. And we have a deep love for Africa to this day, but I began to realize the need for the unreached people in other places in the world, especially in Asia. But there's also unreached people in Africa, and we're mobilizing the Burundi, Rwanda, Congo, Uganda churches with the Luke 10 project to go to unreached places and to go together instead of them wondering where we're going next, what do the Americans do next. We're challenging the church to ask what is the Church of the Global South doing next, and we're mobilizing the workforce, the greatest workforce we have in the Friends Church, which is in Latin America, in Asia, and in Africa. We're mobilizing them to go to unreached people. We have some new work starting in Ecuador soon, some exploration going there with both Americans and people from Peru. We also have a team visiting South Sudan. Randy Littlefield has introduced us to a man in Omaha that grew up and is from South Sudan. And he's joining some Rwandans and some Burundians for an exploratory trip, probably in February. And we also have Michael and KK Linville headed to northern India, and we're meeting with friends from Asia in January to ask their discernment and ask their leading on how and where Michael and KK will go. And will they go alone, or will they go with others from Asia, some Asians on the team? And may Asians even be leading the team? So we're asking those kind of questions. In Bangladesh in 2008, my first trip there, as I met people, first thing off the plane, I actually paid the bail of a man who was in jail for telling others about Jesus. Actually, it wasn't the telling others about Jesus that put him in jail. It was the fact that after 8 months, the man he was witnessing to accepted Christ. Because that man accepted Christ, both of them went to jail. And so right off the plane, in the first half hour I was there, I paid the bail on that person. And then his name was Kanok. And then I found out that in northern Bangladesh, people had never seen a Christian until Albert and his friends started going there to witness. So like in Africa, like even last summer, I was in a village in Africa where they told me that the name of the last white person that had visited there in the 40s. And so all the kids and many of the adults in that particular village, if they hadn't left the village, they had never seen a white person. And so they gathered around to look at my white skin and hear how I talked and watch me make funny hand noises like any weird youth pastor might. And during that, with that happening in Africa, where they had never seen a white guy, here in Bangladesh, where I visited, they had never seen a Christian. So when Albert and Meatley and some of their friends who have the same skin color, speak the same language, when they went there visit there the first few times, people would hear 2 or 3 blocks away that there was a Christian over there. And they would say, really? I've never seen a Christian. I've never heard a Christian. I've never touched a Christian. And they would run over to where they were to see what a Christian looked like. So that's the world we live in 2000 and 2008 and in 2013. And I wonder how long that the world will be like that. And so I really have a passion for the unreached people. According to the stats today by Joshua Project, there's 7,254 unreached people groups. So an unreached people group is categorized as any group of people where 2% or less are evangelical Christians. If there's more than 2%, they aren't on the unreached people groups list. So we're talking pretty minimal, 2% of the population. Out of that 7,254 unreached people groups, that's 43% of all people groups in the world. So that means 57% of the people groups have 2% or more, and that means 43% of all people groups are 2% or less. And I don't know about you, but I was surprised to hear that there was that many unreached people still on this planet today. And out of that, if you can imagine the faces and names, if you look around the room where you're at right now and you see some names, you see some faces, you look in their eyes, take that times 2.9 billion. That number of unreached people groups, just that alone, represents 2.9 billion people. And I know that people and students are still called to missions. I just wanted to take a quick moment of prayer as we think about the unreached people. And we also think about some of the difficult situations we're in. I also heard a stat recently that 90% of Hindu, Muslim, and Buddhists do not know a Christian personally. So 90% do not know a Christian personally. I also heard a stat that there's 7 billion people in the world. So that means 1 in every 7 billion are among the poorest of that 7 billion. So 1 in 7 are the poorest, the bottom billion. And there's 1 in 1,000 Christian missionaries that serve among those bottom billion. So 1 in 7 live there, but 1 in 1,000 live there and serve there. And that's a pretty astonishing stat. And I wonder, and I'm already seeing the hearts of our youth and also even older adults who, when they hear the call of God to those places, sometimes very hard places, they are saying, "Here am I, send me," in the spirit of Isaiah. It's not necessarily that they're called and gifted or want to go there, but that they are willing for the sake of the mission. And I just heard news from Albert Adhikari today in Bangladesh. Both Nepal and Bangladesh are experiencing some pretty big political turmoil right now because elections are coming. And the way that the parties get the attention of the public and of the government before elections is they just cause complete mayhem. They have called strikes, they close off roads, they burn cars and buses, they kill people, sometimes political figures or police, or sometimes innocent bystanders, but usually it's targeted. Anyway, right now it's in the heat of what's going on in Bangladesh. The elections aren't till the last week of January. Once the elections happen, the precedent that's pretty consistent in Asia is that once the elections happen, it immediately stops. Everything's fine. But it's leading up to them. The way their culture gets the attention is they cause complete chaos. And right now, both Nepal and Bangladesh are in it. We had some friends that were supposed to go to Nepal that have postponed because they can't travel right now. They wouldn't be able to do a whole lot if they went. And we have missionaries that after the Thailand thing, while our American friends didn't go home, our missionaries went back. And that's where they're living every day. And we got news from Albert Adhikari that it's very intense right now. And they can't hardly leave their house. There's bombs going off every day in the city where they live, Khulna, which is down south. And there's no public transportation whatsoever. There's no way to visit the churches. There's no way to communicate in most cases. And it's even difficult to get food during the strikes. Food prices go through the roof. And so I just want to say a prayer for the unreached people in a persecuted church, but also that part of the world that's experiencing that strike right now. So, dear Jesus, I pray that you would be close to our missionaries. Thank you for Albert and Measley's faithfulness, and also our missionaries in Nepal. And I also think of the missionaries all over the world that are, and the Christians and the churches that are facing trials, sometimes just because of where they live, other times for the sake of Jesus, because they preach the word of Jesus, they're facing trials. So I pray you'd be with them, that you'd comfort them, that they would be aware of your presence, they'd be full of your power. The same power that raised Jesus from the dead, I pray that you would give that power to our friends all over the world, particularly in Bangladesh and Nepal right now. And I pray that the political situation would tame down and that life would continue for every ethnic group and every religion there. I pray that you would bless them and watch over them. In Jesus' name, amen. And so, we have a clock on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you an introduction of some material from Design Your Impact, which is a 5-hour seminar. I'm just going to try to give you a brief introduction to it. My hope in this session is that you will gain a vision for a new way to mobilize and connect your church missions and the unreached. And at the same time, I hope to give you a glimpse of how you could take this conversation further if, in your context, God were to stir your heart to do so. And so that could include inviting me or Adam Monahan or Bruce Carpenter or Doris Ferguson, some of us who have been trained to give this seminar, and we might be able to work out a visit to your church. It's a 5-hour seminar. We require that all leaders of your church, all persons of influence, your entire elders board or executive council, whatever you call it, that all your pastoral staff, all your main leaders, that they would all be present for the full 5 hours. And we just kind of walk through some stuff. I just want to show you what we walk through. And I also, my hope is that we'll talk about a couple of concepts that you can take home with you tonight to think about how your church might engage in missions in a different way, how you might mobilize your people in a different way. But part of the idea of this is that you become mission focused versus missionary focused. And so our tendency is to be reactive in missions. Our tendency is that when a missionary comes and tells us a story or asks us to support them, we respond to that either positively or negatively. Somehow that engages us in mission. And the idea here is to actually think about the unique DNA of our church and of our people. Think about who they are and what they do, what they like, and prayerfully ask God how we can engage in mission in a proactive way and really be focused on the mission. That actually makes the missionary a greater hero, not a lesser hero. Being mission focused makes the missionary even a greater hero if a missionary is necessary, but it's mission focused. EFM, for a long time, I think Chuck Moninder must have started it, and we call it spiritually owning a field, or you could call it spiritually partnering. Those words all mean something different to everybody. Some people don't like the word own, but spiritually own or spiritual partner, what it means is to emotionally connect, to emotionally own, to emotionally partner. It means to adopt. It's like adopting something. And the way this Design Your Impact seminar, what they call it is to have a strategic mission focus. That's another way of saying it, strategic mission focus. That means to emotionally own, to spiritually own, to adopt. And it's when the particular mission saturates the church. So there's this idea that everything about that mission becomes known to the church. So when they cry, we cry. When they laugh, we laugh, and vice versa. So you have a relationship. And I hope that you'll see as we go through this that the results of that is a huge win for all parties. There's a huge win for the mission, obviously. There's a huge win for the missionary that's there. But there's also a huge win for our churches that's sometimes unrecognizable when you first start out. It's a huge win for our churches when we become have a strategic mission focus or spiritually own a mission. And we don't have time to go through all the ways that it's a win, but I think we'll see a few things tonight. So, the thing I also like about this Design Your Impact material, and by the way, if I forget to say it at the end of the session, you can email me, matt@friendsmission.com, if you'd like me to send you the actual brochures or send the website link, which is at dualreach.org. And we would be we could send you different things about it if you want to think about it. It's not it's not just something that you flippantly do when you're talking about the kind of commitment we're saying with a 5-hour commitment for all your church leaders at the same time. So we want to provide you the kind of materials that make you really think carefully about whether this fits your church, because it doesn't fit every church in every situation. But I was just thinking about how this year alone, 2013, we've been in 3 different places with teams from churches that have gone because they took the Design Your Impact seminar. Crossroads was in Bangladesh. Just spaced. Haviland Friends Church and the Barclay soccer team was in Sinaloa this year. Adam was down there with them. That's all the fruit of Haviland Friends Church taking the Design Your Impact seminar. And Haviland Friends has been making regular trips, and it's a major part of who they are as a church now. And then Derby Friends Church, they just made, I think it's their 3rd trip in April. They went to Bhutan, and I was there with them. That was fun. My first trip to Bhutan, and experienced not only Bhutan, but the mission that Bhutan started across the border in Sikkim, India. And the thing that's common about these 3 mission fields, I realized as I was reflecting, is that in all 3 of these cases, by and large, our churches don't know the missionaries or the mission in those 3 places, because they don't have Western missionaries that have gone from our own churches. So you could count on your hand how many people know Rupak and Pramila Tamang, who are just amazing quality people in Bhutan, amazing quality people. And you can count on your hand who knows them, because they haven't been to the U.S. and they didn't come from our churches, so we don't know them. So therefore, there's one church in the entire United States that spiritually owns Bhutan, and that is Derby Friends Church. And it's because they took a moment, they took 5 hours moment, plus a few other prayer meetings after that, to pray about where they could have their proactive spiritual ownership, their proactive strategic mission focus. And they selected Bhutan as an under-supported, unreached place, an unreached people group of Buddhists. And I could go on and on. The same is true with Bangladesh. That was part of my passion when we first started connecting Crossroads, is that I realized no one knew them. And we've had a rich, long relationship. I've been there 7 times now. All but one of those times I've taken a team from Crossroads. We're just a small little church with very little resources, and it's totally turned our church upside down. It impacts every age and every person in our church, and it's been a huge win for us. And it's within your reach. A small church, big church, whatever, it's within your reach. And same with Sinaloa. It's been had a major impact on Haviland Friends and also on the mission in Sinaloa. They don't have a missionary, but they have a relationship with the church here that's I can't share all the stuff that's coming because it's not official yet, but some really cool things are happening in Sinaloa because of that relationship. And the other thing I like about this material is that it fits any size of church. So it could be a very small church, or it could even be a group of small churches that work together. You don't have to think in terms. In fact, I'm going to only show you 2 of the 10 video examples tonight. I'm going to show you 2 of the 10 that show 10 different churches, and the way they selected their strategic focus kind of helps in the actual seminar. It helps get juices flowing and gives practical ways to see how your church might connect to our mission. And out of those 2, one of them is a bigger church and one of them is a church of 120. But a couple of the other stories are very small churches, in some cases 4 or 5 churches that work together and really had a huge impact. The other thing I love about this seminar is that it focuses on what's in your hands. It's focused on what you can do, not on what you can't do. And there's nothing about this, even when I show these videos, you shouldn't be thinking, well, I'm not like them or I can't be like them. That's not the point. The point is to figure out who you are, what's your unique DNA, and one with that. So my definition of missional, the definition that we use a lot at Crossroads, and I've been using a lot at EFM, is this simple definition. And it's the definition we've been using a lot in church planning here in Mid-America as well. And that is to know who God has called you to and to know them by name. So it's that simple. You think about what does it mean to be on mission, what does it mean to be missional, to know who God has sent you to, and to know them by name. So I'm going to start zipping through this, and I believe God has uniquely designed each local church to take an active role in raising up worshipers for God from every people, tribe, tongue, and nation. And when a church understands its design, so I've been talking about this DNA or what your church is like, it can mobilize its resources for maximum global and local impact. So the 5 pieces of the whole seminar, if we did the whole thing, so this is more like a teaser, is that you would recognize God's global design, that you would discover your design, and that's a major component. So it's fun how the churches that have done it have got a lot of wins out of this besides just in the area of missions, to discover and really affirm who your church is and what your church is good at, because there's so many resources, there's so many things about your church that are really awesome. And then to study other designs, other churches and how they're designed, to design your impact, how you're going to actually go about choosing a mission or a strategic focus or adopting a mission, and then to actually run by design, to put the feet to it, to come up with a strategy on how you're going to move forward. And that would be an example of Howland Friends or Crossroads Friends or Derby Friends, and the way they've, over the last recent years, really run with their design. Now, there's some things that are very consistent, and there's some things that change a lot. And like, for instance, the way we would travel from coast to coast. If we had time, we could have a discussion right now on how people have traveled from coast to coast throughout history. And it's pretty dramatically different today than it was years ago. So there's a lot of change, but there's still consistency, and that is the mission, to get from coast to coast or to get from here to there. If you were to, how do you go back on this thing? Back there. So just real quick, we just have a second here, but if you were to, in your groups, we won't share because we don't have time, but if a new believer was to show up to you, to your church, or ask you, why does your church have a global outreach, and you were to answer with a scripture verse, just real quick in your groups, just share with each other in about 60 seconds, what verse would you choose to describe why you have a global outreach? So I'll just give you 60 seconds. What verse would you use? Okay, so here in Wichita, what verses did you come up with? What was your favorite couple? Acts 1:8. Okay, Acts 1:8 is when they say, it says, go be witness everywhere. Matthew 28, where it says, go and make disciples of all nations. How about one other group, just real quick, one other group share your favorite verse? There's something I have to do this? Just, unmute your mic and throw out a verse.
About 3:16.
I'm sorry, we couldn't hear that. Could you repeat it?
John 3:16.
I heard the very last, I heard the word 16.
John 3:16.
Okay, John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave. So the incarnation, here Christmas is coming, the incarnation of Christ, the Word became flesh. Well, I wish we could go around everybody. I wish we had a little bit more time. But I'm going to look at a couple quick verses. There's the verse in Revelation 7:9. There before me was a great multitude that no one could count, from every nation, tribe, people, and language, standing before the throne. And we could talk quite a bit about what that means. But part of what that's talking about is 7,254 unreached people groups. And that's powerful missiology too, that verse. But probably my favorite verse, the one that I use the most with my family and my church is Acts 1:8, that you'll be my witnesses. And it says in the text, actually, you'll be my witnesses everywhere. It uses the word everywhere, including Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the ends of the earth. And the idea is that we don't argue about which one's the most important. All my life, I've heard people arguing in the church, which is the most important. No, Jesus says we're to be a witness everywhere. In Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the ends of the earth. So if you think, without spending time on this, think about the context of Jesus, what he was saying there. Talking about your neighborhood, your neighbors is Jerusalem, those people that live next to you, those people that you're sent to and that you know them by name. You're sent to them. And also those neighboring communities that are cross-culture, different ethnic groups, or socioeconomic groups. And then lastly, the ends of the earth. We all know what that means. We're called to all those places. And I would ask you, as you think about your own life and as you think about your church's influence, are faithful followers of Christ being added everywhere because of the ministry of you and your church? And it's pretty awesome and exciting to think about how you can connect with missions and connect with mission even beyond your own neighborhood and your own local church and be a part of seeing new faithful followers being added everywhere. And again, for some reason, Merle Kinzer comes to my mind, just thinking about the absolute unknown impact that man has had across the world because of his faithfulness. He hasn't traveled to Bhutan or Bangladesh or Sinaloa, but he has been a major part of new faithful followers of Christ being added because of his faithfulness. So it's pretty. I wish we could spend more time even on giving some examples of what that means, but it's pretty powerful to think of what we can do by being a part of the Acts 1:8 of mission everywhere. And my basic summary of our purpose on life is to be a blessing and witness. Genesis 12, or to be a blessing. Acts 1, to be a witness, to make God look good, to honor God, to show the God that we follow as being a good God that's worthy of following, to show the gospel as worth giving up our lives for, the kingdom as something that's worth giving up everything to have. That's our job, to be blessing and witness. And then we work with God who converts, and we work with the Holy Spirit who convicts the world of its sins and does lots of other things. We work in tandem with God, the Father, and the Holy Spirit to lead people to Jesus and make disciples in Matthew 28. That's my Matt Macy breakfast table theology in a nutshell, right there. But we have both global and local outreach. So one of the things we want to emphasize here is that, and I think we all know this, and sometimes we use this as the reason why we don't go to the ends of the earth, because we say, well, missions is at our doorstep, and it absolutely is. In fact, it's not just other language groups or other colors of skin. It might be the guy next door or across the street that in some ways is cross-cultural. And in some ways, when I say the definition of missional is to know who God has sent you to and to know them by name, I think the core of my family, where we live, is that unreached people is those who won't go to church. Those who won't go to church. So it takes a mission strategy. It takes a missionary strategy that looks very different than typical church strategy in order to reach that people group. It's an unreached people group, those who won't go to church. So in the global local outreach, we're reaching the unreached regardless of whether they live around the corner or around the world. So again, the mission is the same, but maybe the methods look different than your grandparents or your great-grandparents. The mission's the same, but maybe the methods look different. Our task never changes. God has commissioned us to be global witnesses. God has designed the church to have a significant role in global mission, and we could talk a lot about that, but we'll move on. So consider the changing global opportunities. 37 million people who now reside in North America were born outside of Canada and the USA. That's pretty amazing, 37 million people. And you guys know that because they live in your communities, rural and in the city. Travel is faster, easier, and cheaper than any previous generation could have ever dreamed. Around the globe, people want to learn English. The internet and other technologies have put the world within instant reach. Really, here we are on, what's this called? WebEx? The internet and other technologies have put the world within instant reach. Thailand last month. We changed our global outreach because of the changing opportunities around us. So We change our global outreach because of the changing opportunities around us. So we change the method. The mission stays the same, but the method may look a little different. Now, I want to give you an example. This is going to take us probably to around 8:05, 8 or 8:05. I want to show you a video. It's about a 12-minute video. I'm going to show you an example of a church. This is the church that's a little bit bigger, but it's out of the, whatever it is, 10 videos, it seemed like the right one to show for this. And these are the video questions. If you have a note and paper, could you please write down these video questions? Because at the end of the video, I want us to discuss these 3 questions. So number 1, what motivated this church to adopt this mission? What motivated this church to adopt this mission? What was the motivation to adopt this mission? Number 2, where is ministry occurring? And number 3, who is involved in this outreach? So please take those down. Make sure someone in your group, all of you should probably write them down so you're kind of keeping an eye on those questions. This is a 12-minute video. There's actually 2 videos about this church. This is the only church where they highlight it with 2 videos. So I'm just going to show the first one, if I can find it. And assuming you have all the questions, here we go. I'm hoping, yeah, I just clicked on, there we go. Do I have to do anything with the volume? Everybody's on their own with the volume.
When a church in the middle of the American heartland becomes passionate about taking the gospel on the other side of the world. And one church listen, the man who helped launch explains how God led them into an amazing mission. The church always had strong mission. We were involved in some 30 to 35 ministries around the world in somewhat of a shotgun approach. And shotgun often has a negative connotation, and I don't mean it that way because the 30 to 35 ministries that we support gave us a wonderful global sense in the church. We wanted to be a church for all nations. And just the word nations pumps us up, you know. When we think about the nations and the glory of God among the nations, that gets our blood racing through our veins. And so there was that climate. On top of that, we then came to attitude focus. I like to talk about it in terms of a gun. My brother-in-law is a hunter. So he tells me there's a gun that exists. It's called an over-under. And there's a shotgun barrel, and then there's a rifle barrel on top of it. And there's 2 triggers, and you can decide which one you want to pull. And so for many years, we pulled a shotgun, which sends a lot of BBs out in a lot of places. But on top of that, we made the rifle that shot 1 slug, 1 place, deep penetration. So it wasn't a sense of trading in the shotgun for the rifle, but in addition, we had the rifle on too, because we want to continue to serve and minister to these 30 different ministries that we support. We're going to continue to do that. We're not dropping.
Hey, we're getting an awful lot of feedback. I don't know if anybody else is.
Is your mic muted?
We're all taken care of here. I'm thinking somebody else has got a microphone on because we're hearing them 3 times.
It's the Evangelical Friends Church, the host. It's Dave Kingery.
Okay. I'm going to push play again, see what happens. I assume everybody had that problem, so I'm going to have to restart it. we'll just wrap up here real quick. I'd like to just have a couple of sides to answer each question with the goal of being done with this in around 5 minutes or so. And the first question, what motivated this church to adopt this mission? Would a couple of people unmute their mic and speak into that? What motivated this church to adopt this mission?
They had already developed relationships with people who were already here in the United States that belonged to that people group there.
The mustache approach, right under their nose. How about one other answer?
The calling from God and what the person heard from the conference, but then ultimately the calling from God.
Yeah. The thing I think is intriguing about that is as we study missions history, like we've been doing a lot of that, Dan Kamick, he looks at the future through the history, which is a new concept for me that I really appreciate. So he's always looking at, I'm a vision guy, he's always looking at the future through history. I keep saying that. I'll stop repeating that. But one of the things that we're seeing in missions history, both in the French church and outside the French church, is that oftentimes it's one person that champions the cause. One person that decides to champion the cause that rallies thousands of people sometimes, groups of churches or a whole church to be a part of the mission. So that one person could be you, or that one person could be one of your sons or daughters. Or that could be that one person that you encourage in your church to reach and unreached people. So let's go to the next question. Number 2, where is ministry occurring? Someone just unmute their mic and speak into that. Where is ministry occurring?
Home and abroad.
Okay, I think the answer is clear. Both home and abroad, ministry is occurring because of this relationship into Central Asia. So in Central Asia, ministry is happening, and at home, ministry is happening because of this relationship. And number 3, who is involved in this outreach?
The whole church was involved.
The whole church. The UPS man, the pastoral staff, the short-term members. Now in video 2, it would go on and talk about like the youth worker and spouse reception that they had, that they put together a real nice meal, and they met with them and talked to them about how their ministry in the youth group will be a part of this mission. And then the children's ministry, all the staff of the children's ministry, they had a banquet with them and they discussed how will this mission impact their children's ministry. And so, I mean, and there's a whole bunch of other examples. I won't repeat them all. I can't remember them all. But video 2 that shows how it just saturated the entire church. And I think even in this video, they mentioned that part of the deal with joining this church and your orientation, you find out that your corporate calling, part of who you are, by being part of this church, is to be a part of the ministry in this Asian context. So really cool. Okay, so I'm going to turn this over to our host so he can lead us into a break.
No. Don't turn it over. You'll lose when you turn it over. You just keep it right there where you are. I can talk and see and everything else.
Okay.
But everything's coming through just fine. The last time you tried to turn over the controls, you lost your videos. Just keep it like it is. And I'm going to do a little work here with Bud Lawrence, see if we can get him on here. Okay?
Okay.
Everything's going great. So we'll see you in 10 minutes.
10 minutes, 8:16.
Right.
Okay.
So, in the theory and the practical,
you don't get those words, this is out. Okay, I'm talking through the internet now. Can you hear me, Bud? You didn't hear me, did you? Okay, now your microphone is not working. So, all right, now let me, you see that audio, and you saw the speaker microphone test, and you just tried your speaker. Now go to your microphone. That should, all right. Do you have a drop-down box there? All right. The one that you have on there right now is not working, so click on another one. Do you have more than one option for that? All right. So the first one doesn't work. So now, and now is your speaker turned all the way up, the volume on it. I'm still wondering. I'm wondering if you are still on your options. If you've got your headphone option that you're trying to get sound through. Oh, you got you got external speakers on there. Take them off. Take them off, and it's not. You see, it's not going to do you a bit of good to have your computer speaker turned up if you've got external speakers on. You didn't have those on there the other day when we did a test. All right, well then go and try another one of your audio options. Yes. Yes. Your audio worked a moment ago. Unplug Matt, I think any time that you want to go, we're just about ready to start in again. Matt, can you hear me? Matt, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to mute my mic and you can get on your way again.
Okay, everybody with us. Got an email during break. A text during break from Adam Monahan. They induced Sarah this morning for baby number 2, and Seth Michael was born at about 5:15. So congratulations to Adam and Sarah Monahan. Seth Michael was born at 5:06 actually. He was 7 pounds 15 ounces. 7 pounds 15 ounces, and he was 19 inches tall, long, wide. Adam and Sarah Monahan. Yeah. Now, I want to look real quick at the 5 components of every church's DNA. So this is irrelevant to what you do with your DNA. These are just the 5 components of the way this curriculum breaks down who your church is. And this part of it is about as powerful as anything of being worth gathering your leaders for 5 hours to look at. It's just the affirmation of realizing who your church is. It's really exciting to see who your church is. But we're going to kind of just look at it in an introductory kind of way because we don't have 5 hours to dive into it with each of our churches. But the 5 areas are strengths, and that's your best qualities and your most exciting ministries. And so imagine just spending 10 or 15 minutes with all your leaders thinking about what are all your strengths and putting them on a flip chart and really affirming what those strengths are. Notice that there's nowhere on here it says weaknesses. We don't care about your weaknesses for this. We want to know what your strengths are. And then number 2 is resources. That includes finances, but a lot more. Things like individual expertise, the materials and networks that you have. Really think about people that you know that you could coordinate with to do the work of your church. All the expertise. You've got all kinds of experts in your church that could have deep and powerful impact on mission fields. Not only foreign fields, but even local contexts, maybe that are unrealized. Maybe that person in your church has never realized how their expertise could be used. And I wish we had time to even just go down the list of different kinds of experts EFM is enjoying on the field in different places. So many things that you would never normally think of immediately. It's not just the pastor and shepherd type of gifts. There's all kinds of gifts within your church. And then number 3, the passions, what you really care about. So take missions off the table. What are things that your people in your church just absolutely love? What gets them excited? What's their passions? So on all these things, take missions off the table. Don't be tunnel vision on missions. Think who is your church? What is the DNA of your church? What are your passions? And then number 4, the context, your size, location, and history. Who is your church in size, location, and history? And then number 5, and this is more about the missions then, what is your experience in missions? What are the exciting ways God has been using you in global outreach? And when I say you, I don't mean just corporately or officially as a church, but the people in your church. What things have they done in their lives that have impacted or been a part of missions? What do they know about missions? What have they experienced? And so, if we had the full seminar, you would meet with all your leaders and answer maybe 4 or 5 questions. You don't answer every question, but you see the questions to get your mind stirred. And you'd spend some time on each of these 5 areas of context. Now, real quick, I should have said before I started this, please write down those 5 categories, because now we're going to watch a 3-minute video. This will be the last video we watch tonight. And during this video, I want you to think about, and I wish we had time to show 5 videos, because each one of them is so different. Every context is so different, but what are the 5 things of DNA, 5 parts of DNA: strength, resources, passion, context, and missions experience that you see in this church? Just jot notes down as you watch this video. Make sure you write those 5 categories down. Now I'm going to find the video. And everybody mute.
Unmute your mic.
I just realized I was muted. Sorry about that. I said, would you chime in and please tell one of the strengths that you saw? And so here in Wichita, Gary Greer, I think you heard his answer, that the leadership had a mindset on missions. And a line that really struck out to me was, they said they had a reputation for missions. They were a church known for missions, but the church was not satisfied. And when I think about the unreached people, I think that's part of who we have to be. When we see the need and see the call from Christ, we have to say, but the church was not satisfied. Powerful statement to me. Okay, number 2, resources, would someone unmute and tell where they saw resources at this church?
They had 2 persons from their church with the New Tribes mission already, and they had finances and leadership.
Yeah, that's huge. The fact that they already had a relationship with a missions organization, it was right under their nose, that mustache method, and the fact that they even had 2 families from their church on the mission field with that organization. And like Gingrey said, also finances, leadership. I think he listed a third thing. And I also noted that they contacted the Adoptive People Clearinghouse. So that's a very proactive method. Instead of just saying, what are we already doing, what's already happening, and let's just kind of plug away at whatever's happening. They took a proactive stance, a very mission-focused stance. And they went into an unreached people. That's exciting about some of our new Luke 10 initiatives right now with EFM is that we're seriously looking at places that are unreached, and we're starting brand new work. That's one of the conclusions of Ron Stanzel as he studied the history of missions quite deeply. And as he keeps reporting, is the basic conclusion he found in studying the history is that we still need pioneers. So we're still looking in the Friends Church for pioneers. We're still looking for people that would start a new work. And the Shuar people of Ecuador and the people in northern India, we don't know yet. We know who Michael and KK are called to, but we don't know them by name yet. And we will soon. And I think about how there's going to be people at Rose Hill Friends Church that has no idea how much they're going to be giving to the mission in Rose Hill yet. God's going to surprise them. And there's also people at Rose Hill Friends and in Mid-America and across this nation that'll be standing in northern India someday because Michael and KK said, yes, here am I, send me. And they end up in northern India. And there's even going to be babies that aren't even born yet. Will it be Seth Michael Monahan that will someday serve in northern India because of the obedience of the church, the obedience of Michael and KK that go? There's people that aren't even born yet that will be serving there, that will be sacrificing for the sake of the gospel in northern India. And then also in South Sudan, I could go on and on. I didn't mean to go on that little side trail speech. But number 3, what about the passions? What did we see in that church, the passions, what you really care about? Someone unmute and speak in.
They wanted to go to the far ends of the earth where someplace had never been.
They had a passion to go where no one else had been. Very good. And then what about the context? Their size, location, and history. How did that impact their mission? Okay, since no one's speaking in, I will speak.
Well, we said that they were looking for a group about the same size, it appeared to us.
Yeah, about the same size.
Yes.
And in the context of that, they were saying, we're pretty small, but we think we can do something pretty huge in the kingdom. And we're willing to step out and take some risk and do some adventure despite our smallness. And that's pretty awesome. 7,254 unreached people groups today. 2% or less are evangelical Christians. So we need churches that are willing to step up like that. And then also, of course, they're, the fact they have that relationship with New Tribes, they have a couple of families that are in New Tribes that led them to talk to New Tribes more and so on. So that's part of their context. And then experience in missions, besides what we've already said, which seems redundant on that, is there anything else that we haven't said? Exciting ways God has been using the church and global outreach. that would impact what they did? Is there anything we missed? Hmm.
It shows that people group that was small and they felt like they could have
Yeah, so since they had a clean slate in asking God prayerfully where would they go, they were able to be strategic in thinking about the size of the people group in relation to the size of their church. And that's kind of where we're at with EFM with the Luke 10 initiative. Is just wondering, what idea. We invite you to the Luke 10 think tank. And that's simply, if you pray or have a conversation and have an idea about where God might be leading the French church to start a new field, you're part of the think tank. So you just have to report with your thoughts. And a Luke 10 trip is you gather a small team and you go explore those places. And your focus is more on the instructions of Jesus in Luke 10 than it is on knowing where it will end or knowing where you'll even go. So you say yes before you even know where you're going. You even set the dates. Theoretically, you could even set the dates for the trip before you even know where you're going. So we'll be sending out a prayer card in December asking you to pray for new fields in EFM. And so I ask when that shows up to your mailbox that you take that serious and be praying for where we're going, where you might be going, with or without EFM. We want to see everyone engaged in mission strategically, in one way or the other. So now, if you think about those 5 strengths for yourself, and as you sit there right now and think about your local church context, so that place that you worship, that you call your church home. If you were to just, real quickly, we're not going to have time to go through each thing for each person, for every church, but if you were real quickly to think, if I gave you 60 seconds to think, okay, what sets your church apart from the average church? And don't limit yourself to the idea of experience and missions. Just think in terms of your strengths, resources, passion, and context. What makes you kind of unique from other churches? Just think for 60 seconds and share with those in the room with you, what's unique about your church? What could that mean for you as a church? So is there any site that would like to share a highlight of what you discovered in the last few seconds.
We talked about we have diversity, we've got some boldness and family focus.
Cool, amen. Anyone else?
This is Barclay, and we're looking at both Havlin Friends and Pratt Friends. Someone in the church who has been on the mission field. We have Neifert. We also have in our presence tonight, you've already mentioned Doris Ferguson and Willard are here. And then a person in each of those churches called to encourage the missionaries by being in touch with them in earlier years through letters and now through emails. Did you hear that?
Yeah, very good. Cool. How about one more group share a highlight?
Hey, Matt, it's Drew and Angleton Friends, and we have 6 different churches represented down here in Texas in our group tonight. So we only got through 1.5 in the time given, and so we probably have to continue the discussion after we get released tonight to get everybody's perspective on it.
Cool. Thanks for chiming in with that. And
Sure thing.
that leads to our assignment. Your homework is to take those 5 resources. And if you wanted to take this further, even without doing the seminar, you wanted to just get the worksheet to work through with the questions on these 5, I would be glad to email those to you if you would simply email me at matt@friendsmission.com. Matt@friendsmission.com. I could email you that to work through further. But to really start thinking about who you are as a church, what your unique DNA is a powerful, powerful thing. As you think about, it's kind of like Dan Kamick's approach as executive director, looking at history as a mirror to the future. So looking at who you are and your history is a mirror to the future of where your church could really be effective instead of spinning wheels. And I also just want to add my own 2 cents to this, and that is that, Randy here in our group was sharing about how the Missional Network, which is a missional group that's really targeting those who won't go to church, so they have a very different kind of a missionary type context that they're working in. And so that means it feels like their resources are smaller, they're a smaller group. And they're making big connections to the South Sudanese friends and also Ethiopia. And they've done several things to make those connections. The one thing I pointed out is just the simple thing, again, it's right under our nose, is if you or someone in your church has been intentionally trying to reach a non-Christian, so if they've gone cross-culture and they're trying to work with someone who doesn't know Christ, or maybe like a neighbor of mine that says he hates the church and hates Christians, and yet we're very good friends, and he's become friends with a lot of the Christians in my church. And I'm constantly redefining church for him, helping him understand what church is. If you are that type of person or someone in your church has been trying to reach someone, you have missiological understanding that might be extremely powerful to apply to a mission field context. So if you're only thinking about how big your church can be or how many dollars you have or whatever, if you're thinking in those terms of just the church, it might be tough. But if you're thinking about the cross-cultural of those who won't go to church or don't know Christ, those who don't know Christ, you are a missionary in your context. And not only when you share with the missionaries on the field, will they reap benefit from that, but as you share resources and ideas with them, you will reap back understanding about mission. And next month, in January, I'm going to share 2 basic principles about missiology that you can apply, 2 very basic principles that you can apply to your neighbor that doesn't know Christ, or to a church plant that you're working with, or to a foreign missions context. These principles really revolutionized my understanding of mission, and I'm looking forward to sharing those next month in January. And so even the most simple understanding by just being someone who's a friend of sinners makes you have incredible missiology understanding. Jesus, the Word who became flesh, the one who pitched tent among us, the one who said in John 20:21, as the Father sent me, so I send you. So if you are able to say, as Jesus sent me, so I send you, if you can say that to your wife, your kids, with honesty, or if you can say that to someone in your church, you have the understanding that's required, that's necessary to be a part of missions anywhere on the planet, in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, the ends of the earth. So your assignment then, your homework is to look at these 5 components and to think about what this means for your church. Strengths, resources, passions, context, and experience. Our task never changes. God has commissioned us to be global witnesses, and God has designed the church to have a significant role in global outreach. So every local church should proactively seek God leading to a global outreach that maximizes its potential based on unique characteristics and context. So if statement 1 is true, that He has commissioned us to be global witnesses, and that each church is uniquely designed to have a significant role, then statement 2 is true, that every local church should proactively, not reactively, but proactively seek God's leading to do a global outreach that maximizes this full potential. So, in continue the review, consider the changing global opportunities, map your DNA. Every church should be proactive. I'm just going to point this out to you real fast as we move toward the conclusion that the 6 characteristics of a strategic focus model. So if we were to say, we want you to spiritually own a field, and I could give a long talk about philosophically why I think the current and future model of missions requires spiritual ownership. It requires the rifle in addition to the shotgun. You don't put the shotgun away. You don't stop welcoming friends and non-friends missionaries that come and want to speak to your church and to your people. You don't stop doing that. You continue doing that. That's an important part of mission. But you add to that a rifle where you have deep penetration. And the 6 characteristics of that rifle is that you prayerfully adopt. So it's not just random. You're prayerfully adopting. You're strategic. There's a defined component to it. There's a cooperative component. So like even when Randy was sharing about the missional network here in Wichita, that's a small group. The better together. We are better together in a few different areas in the church. Most things we do, we're better separately. I'm probably going to reach my neighbor better with a few people in my church than with all of Mid-America. But there's a few things that I'm better together. If I'm with other churches, even nationally, we can do it better. So cooperative is important in missions. And then embraced, when it's very deeply owned by every person in your church and every ministry of your church, then it also becomes invested. So those 6 things, those are characteristics of when you're really spiritually owned. Prayerfully adopted, strategic, defined, cooperative, embraced, and invested. And so putting that in a sentence, you would say, prayerfully adopt a strategic, defined, cooperative focus and lead your whole church to embrace and invest in that task. So, there's flesh and blood to all this as well. Just a couple of closing remarks. Yesterday I spent 2 hours with Jeremy Smuck. And if you remember, Jeremy Smuck and Betty and their 2 children went to Aguas Calientes, Mexico. And we were told when they went that they were going into a very intense spiritual battle, that it was heavy darkness that they were entering, and that there would be great spiritual warfare, and that we needed to pray for them. Same with Candy Foster when she went, and Andrea Byrne and the Hurons. And just yesterday, I sat with Jeremy Smuck and listened to his pain and listened to his woundedness. As I don't know if everybody knows his story, but while they were there serving very faithfully and with great strategy and great insight and wisdom. And I would even say they were very spiritually alert, a very spiritually aware couple. I would not consider them spiritual babies. Spiritually mature, dynamic Christian missionaries, I would describe Jeremy and Betty. Well, while they were there, and it's not even all makes sense to Jeremy and Betty, but their marriage fell apart. And it seems to Jeremy at this point that there's the hope has become very dim for any chance that their marriage will get back together. It's still not gone, but it's becoming dimmer and dimmer. And he's here in Wichita now, doing some lawn service work. And yesterday, while we were sitting there in our rocking chairs there on the patio, we were kind of reviewing kind of what God's been doing in our hearts lately. And I was thinking about Matthew 10. And David Platt said, when he thought about Matthew 10, he said, God has ordained that you will suffer for the sake of the Great Commission. God has ordained that you will suffer for the sake of the Great Commission. So God's plan God's strategy is that you will suffer for the sake of the Great Commission. And it seems real easy when we look at Acts 1:8, when we look at Matthew 28, when we talk about being a blessing and a witness and making disciples, when we talk about our ministry strategies, it seems real easy to be flippant, like we just go do it. It's just simple. We just go do it. It is actually pretty simple, but it's not easy, and there's a great price to pay. And my heart working with our missionaries, my heart has grown heavier and heavier for what Jesus is asking them to do and asking us to do. And it's one thing to say, I'll go myself, and it's yet another to say that I will give my sons for the sake of the Great Commission. And to say that I will give my sons even if it doesn't produce the fruit that I expect, or even if I don't see the fruit that I expect. And to look at Homer and Lois Smock as they sent their son, Aguas Calientes, and to look at Jeremy Smock, who sent his daughters and took his daughters, Aguas Calientes, and to think of the summary of Matthew 10, where it says, Jesus says his strategy, his plan, on purpose, he sends us as sheep among wolves. On purpose, he sends us as sheep among wolves. So every morning at my breakfast table for the last about 3-4 weeks, I've been praying for my sons as they are sent as sheep among wolves, as I send them to the public school on that bus. And as I pat them on the back and give them hugs and kisses on the way out the door, I say, I'm praying for you as I'm sending you as sheep among wolves. Oddly, they haven't asked me yet, what does that mean? And I've told them, be shrewd as snakes and as innocent as doves. And one of our favorite verses for several years is in Matthew 10 that says, do not be afraid of man. The worst thing man can do is kill you. But be afraid of God, because not only can he kill you, he can send your soul to hell. And right after that, Jesus says to his disciples, and he's saying it to you as he sends you, he says, you have to hate your mother, father, your brother, sister, yes, even your own life to be of my follower. Yes, you have to give up your life, but take up the cross, or you cannot be my follower. And earlier in that chapter, right after he says, I'm sending you as sheep among wolves, which I get stuck on that. That's ridiculous. What kind of strategy is that, to send us as sheep among wolves? Right after that, he says, sons will turn against their fathers, daughter-in-laws will turn against their mother-in-laws. And as we were talking about that on my patio yesterday, beautiful day yesterday, and I was watching Jeremy as he was talking about his pain and how he still feels a calling to mission. And he can't give up that calling. He can't figure out how to give it up. He still feels called. He still feels called to go, and he wonders, is it still possible that he could be a missionary after going through what he has on the Aguas Calientes mission field? During those moments, he remembered a time, and I remember when Betty, his wife, she has lots of visions and dreams. And she was sharing one of her visions, and she shared it there at Northridge at a breakfast. And in the vision that they were sharing and that they were praying over, she saw 4 body bags. And they were the sizes of her family. And I don't know if Betty down there in southern Mexico. She moved in with her folks. They're way down south of Aguascalientes. I don't know if she remembers that vision and remembers what that could mean, but I watched Jeremy for the first time start to understand what that vision might mean when we think about the 4 body bags. And I think of Matthew 10 that summarized, God has commissioned that Jeremy, God has commissioned that Matt, God has commissioned that Merle Kinzer, God has commissioned that Drew Davenport and that David Kingery will suffer for the sake of the Great Commission. Not only that, but we're going to not only be sent, but we are going to send. And I wonder sometimes, and I was confessing this in Thailand for the missionaries, if I'm man enough, am I man enough to send people as sheep among wolves? Am I man enough to send someone to suffer for the sake of the Great Commission? And as I was looking at the back of the room, I saw Michael and KK Linville, and they have their baby Nehemiah. And I was there on the Sunday that they told their church that EFM had accepted them to go to northern India. And I watched their brothers and sister, and I watched both sets of parents, and I watched the church nod their heads in acceptance with a sense of joy in their hearts. Just like in Luke 10, they came back with joy. Whether they were accepted or rejected, they came back with joy. And I watched them accept that, and I almost couldn't stand the moment. And I wondered if I'm man enough to tell those parents that I will be directly a part, and will you? And I wonder if you're man enough, if you're woman enough, if you could tell those parents and tell that church that you will be directly a part of sending them as sheep among wolves to suffer for the sake of the Great Commission. That's God's plan. That's His strategy. He has ordained it. It's not an exception. It's a given. And I think about that even when I meet with my neighbors that I probably wouldn't be friends with if it wasn't for the sake of the Great Commission. But the joy in it all is that eternity will show that it was worth the price. So the light at the end of the tunnel, the joy of it all, God has ordained that you will suffer for the sake of the Great Commission. But eternity will show that it was worth the price. Eternity will show that it was worth the price. And to look at Jeremy in the eyes yesterday on that patio and say, Jeremy, and here I am in my comfortable home. And I was doing a home improvement project, cleaning up from it when he came over. And my 4 sons were all there. And my wife was there. We just celebrated 20th anniversary. And to say to Jeremy, eternity will show that it's worth the price. And then to 2 weeks ago, look across a burger at Sammy and Celeste Sanders, who I don't think they would mind me saying, I consider them a bit naive as I share the spiritual battle that they're going into, and that we've got to call the church to a whole other level of spiritual awareness when we send people to that. We'll send them to the mission field, that we're in a spiritual battle that we don't recognize in our culture very easily. Our culture has made us blind to that in so many ways. And as I tell all that to Sammy and Celeste and review what's happened to the team in Aguascalientes, they look at each other and say, yep, we're ready to go. And in a sense, I think that's a beautiful act of obedience. In another sense, I think they're naive. But I think that it's mostly, truly, an act of obedience and love of Christ, that they're willing to go and that they will go. And then recently got an email from Brad Carpenter. He was just sharing with the staff as they think through the next steps in the strategy at Rwanda. And, he made a big decision. He and Chelsea made a big decision. Their extended family, Bruce and Donita and Michelle, Jeff and his family, Chelsea's family, the Roberts family, they all made big decisions. The church, Northridge, their home church, the broader church, Mid-American EFM, made a big decision for them to give up the U.S. and raise their family in Rwanda. They've been in Kigali, and it's a big sacrifice to live there, but they're now asking God where to go next, and they see that it's going to be a whole nother level of sacrifice. And Brad, he's had some moments lately where he's staring it in the face and knowing that the future can be pretty tough. It's going to be pretty tough. And he's going to be dragging a young family into that. And so I repeat Matthew 10, as we think about all the glory and the beauty of missions, and it is a glorious thing. And to picture every tongue, tribe, and nation and people gathered around the throne, and to realize that God will not truly be glorified in its completeness, because every tongue, tribe, nation, and people is a different window, a different cultural window to who the character of God is. So the fullness of the character of God will not be realized until every tongue, tribe, and nation and people are gathered around the throne worshiping Him. So the glory of all that comes with a big price. And I think we have to ask ourselves and ask our church and challenge our church, are we ready to pay that price? You don't have to pay it. You can be disobedient. But are you willing to pay that price? And are you willing to stand behind people who are paying the price? And even what about those unnamed faces that we don't know that's on the EFM payroll or not on the EFM payroll, and other missions organizations in unreached places and very hard places? Some places, like Roy Twaddell, is working with places that we can't even talk about, in Iran and Iraq and Afghanistan, because the price would be it would be reckless to go that direction, to be sharing what they're doing. And so that's my conclusion, with my heart heavy, and want to be in constant prayer for those missionaries that we're sending, and also those our own children. I'm not only willing to send my own children, but in the sense of the corporate call. So I say I, but I mean we. We as a church are willing to send not only our own sons and daughters, but I am willing to send your sons and daughters. And I'm willing to send you. And it's not easy. There's nothing easy about doing that. But we're willing to do it out of obedience. And I want to emphasize that in the Design Your Impact seminar mode, or in that approach, that it never pushes anyone to make a decision that the whole church isn't ready to make. It's actually just more like a coaching method to allow the church leaders to think through what their unique DNA is and how it might fit in the mission. And it doesn't even there's not an emphasis in it. In fact, it's not written by the French church. This curriculum doesn't even point directly to the French church. It allows you to be a part of what mission you feel led to as a church. And then also implementing new things in your church. Like if you start thinking, I know we've barely scratched the surface here tonight, but when you start thinking about new things for your mission focus, it absolutely does not imply abandoning the excellent ministry work that you're already doing. So whatever missions involvement you already have in place, whatever ministry you have in place, you keep that. That's the shotgun. You keep the shotgun. That's essential. But then you add possibly a new rifle. Some of you already have rifles, and it's exciting to see where your rifles are leading you. And I'm looking forward to talking more with you about Luke 10 when we have chances. If you or someone in your church is interested in being a part of the Luke 10 think tank or trip, or you have an idea, or God gives you insight about where the friends met start a new field, please let us know. And I would love to talk to you more about any of these topics. I know we didn't get to have a lot of interaction, but I'd love to talk to you more about any of this as it relates to your church, with or without missions, or as it also relates to missions. So I look forward to being with you for half a session in January. I'm going to let Dave Kingery take the mic.
Matt, before you unmute your mic, you said next time that you would talk about 2 basic principles of missions that we can apply both at home and internationally. Do you want to say any more about that now, or do you just want to leave that with us and then wonder what that will include?
Yeah, I could. I'll tell you the 2 principles right now.
Well,
and
no.
If you want to come back next month, we'll actually talk about them.
Okay.
And the first principle is learner, servant, friend, storyteller. So you start out as a learner, then you become a servant, then you become a friend, and then a storyteller. That's one of the things we're going to talk about and unpack a little bit about what that means with your neighbor, and also what it means in a foreign missions context. And the second principle I want to talk about is the 3 prepositions of to, for, or with. And so as you think about doing ministry with people, whether it be your neighbors, people in your church or whether it be across the world, there's a dramatic, huge difference between whether you do it to them, for them, or with them. And we're going to be emphasizing the with. So we're just going to unpack those a little bit more next month, and we may talk a little bit more about Luke 10. And then I know that you're planning to have a really fun ceremony for those who are graduating from this course.
Thank you, Matt. Don't turn the controls back over. I think everyone can hear me okay. Every one of us was touched deeply, of course, by what you said, but we felt your passion for the unreached, and in that, especially, we were motivated in our own sense of mission. Your love for God's people is deep, and it comes through in everything you say and do. And there are many ways we could say thank you for what you've given us tonight. But I think all of us would agree that above all is your model of love for the Lord that is manifest in your love for God's people, and tonight, as we have spoken, particularly for the unreached and those who suffer. And we must thank you for that. As Matt mentioned, next month we will celebrate all persons who are involved in the Institute. We will name those who have been involved in the Institute at least one session of each of the 12 courses in the past 3 years, beginning February 2011. And we will follow that with certificates to all who have been faithful in attendance of all 12. So it will be a very special night, as every night is for the Institute, and we look forward to seeing you there. That will be January 6th. So I would like for us to conclude this evening's section with a prayer of thanksgiving and a prayer for God's blessing. Eternal God, first we thank you for Seth Michael Monahan. We pray for your blessings on him and on the Monahan family. We thank you for the challenge given to us by Matt Macy. We take to heart what he has shared from his heart. And we ask that Jesus' call to share the gospel to all the world be our continual motivation to reach the unreached, at home, abroad. Make us faithful in sharing Christ's good news of salvation. We pray for your Spirit to bring renewal to each of us personally and to our churches as we joyfully celebrate the birth of Jesus Christ, our Savior and Lord, Lord over all the world, Lord of the universe. And it is in his name we give thanks. Amen. Go, friends, and be faithful to the Great Commission. Thank you all.
Hey, Dave. Dave. Kingery. Hey, here at our group, we had Dennis West, me, and Diane Hudson.
I need light. Micah, hang on just a second. We were doing something else. So this is at Lamar. Tell me again.
Dennis West.
You had Micah, and who else?
Dennis West
Okay.
and Diane Hudson.
Oh, okay, good.
Okay?
Okay, we got it. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Okay.
We'll talk next time.
Okay, good night.